I'm excited. So Angie, so for folks that are viewing the screens, if you double click on Angie's slide deck, it will maximize it or make it bigger so you can see that a little bit better. So I suggest doing that. Unless you want our faces bigger, but I think you're probably going to get more benefit from looking at the slides than our faces. So feel free to double click that so that you are able to view that a little bit bigger. And then if you have any questions or when we throw out some participation stuff, either throw it in the chat or you can request to share in your audio and video, and I will be happy to allow you to jump on and ask questions, quote unquote, in person, which is always really fun too. So we highly suggest that. There are only 6 of you that can share your audio and video at one time because we're actually right now taking up 3 different spots for that, but we're happy to have people pop in and out and answer any questions, but I'll let Angie kind of kick it off.
Awesome. I'm going to post a URL in the chat and give you just a moment. So it's a collaborative whiteboard URL. You can you don't have to sign up, but you do have to share your email address. But I promise you, they won't spam you as long as you don't select the little checkbox. If you click on that link and click in the upper right-hand corner where it says "Continue as guest" and enter your email, and then just don't select "Send me updates," then you can collaborate on a little whiteboard that we will be using, and it will make things probably easier that way. Since we have the screen sharing limit, at least we can all be looking at the same whiteboard and I can share that and then everybody can kind of see what people are doing. So if you're able and willing, it would be a really fun place to collaborate. Otherwise, we also have some PDFs that we can share with you if that link isn't working for you, or if you wish to work offline, or if you just want them as resources in the future. So I'm going to kick it off and get started, and I have my lovely timer here, so I make sure to stay on track. In case anybody wants to know what my favorite thing about working from home is, it's my new analog timer. I talk about it every chance I get. So hello, good morning, or guten Abend, wherever you may be in the world. And welcome to our fun interactive workshop on visual storytelling framed around the hero's journey. Just to introduce myself, I'm Angie Wang. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Director of UX Instruction at Prime Digital Academy, which we'll introduce in a moment. And my lovely colleague with me helping lead is Christy Larson. Christy, you want to introduce yourself? Oh, you're on mute.
I wasn't. I muted myself just in case the dog started barking or something crazy happened. I am the Director of Employer Partnerships, also at Prime Digital Academy. So I work really closely with our employer network, but also do some career development with the students and alumni and career support. So that is who I am. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Paul. A little bit about Prime briefly. This is not about Prime, but just to set us in context. So I mentioned I'm the Director of UX Instruction at Prime. Prime is a school, a non-traditional school or a boot camp, if you will, that offers immersive programs for adults who are career switching into tech fields. Currently, we have 2 full-time programs, although 2021 should bring some more offerings and maybe some part-time options. But currently, we have 2 full-time programs, one in full stack engineering, which is a 20-week program, and one in user experience design, which is an 18-week program. So I lead the user experience design program, and we take a really wide lens approach to what user experience is. And one component of that discipline, as you might suspect, is visual design. And so this workshop actually is a derivation of a workshop we do in our program curriculum, just as a reminder to be able to apply basic design principles to everything that we do, be it presenting, verbally, visually, as well as things like interfaces and that sort of thing. So, and Prime, we have how many grads now, Christy? Like over 1,000, I think, and placed at a variety of organizations from small startups to Fortune 2s or what have you, largely concentrated in the Twin Cities area, but starting to populate all around the world. And there was one thing.
We also have a campus in Kansas City.
Thank you. Yes, we are located in Minneapolis and we have a campus in Kansas City. And now some of you on the call might, like Paul has done some partnerships with us and has done some teaching at Prime. Some of you might work at orgs where you have Prime alumni. The reach is pretty far and we're really proud of our alumni. They do some really great things. But we just work there. Oops. And today we're going to focus on visual storytelling. Hopefully that's what you signed up for. If you didn't, you can leave and I won't even know you were here. And we're unlike teaching in a lecture hall where you can see people get up and leave. So we're going to talk about basic design principles and applying those to storyboarding and presentation design. And for some people, this might be a refresher. For others, it might be something that is totally new to you. Hopefully it's pretty accessible. That's the idea. And we are going to approach this we're gonna meet these two goals. So I'm very accountable to goals and the things that we said we were gonna do in this session. So we're gonna talk about hierarchy, contrast, and rhythm, and talk about those things and then apply them in a storyboard. And then hopefully we're gonna create and share digital storyboards to see how you and others tackle the same problem in different ways. So that's really the fun, interactive, workshop-y part of this. And that's why that whiteboard is really beneficial and helpful. If we were all in a physical room, I'd have Sharpies and markers and paper templates. But since we're working digitally, we'll do that digitally. So these are our goals for today. Again, if this is not what you want to do, you don't have to be here, but I'm really glad that you are. And I'm excited to work through this with you. Okay, so before we before I share some knowledge, I want to source some knowledge from all of you because all of you probably have attended a presentation, given a presentation, that's probably all, made a presentation, gave a presentation somebody else made for you, partnered on one, right? So this is something that we've all experienced. So I'd like to either in the chat or ideally, I'm going to toggle over to the whiteboard. And I'd like to hear from all of you, what are some components of effective presentations? So just close your eyes and think about one you've attended, you've given, you've received feedback on, you've seen, and think about what are some components and pieces that make that presentation effective in your mind. So I'm going to toggle over, if you all can see.
Sorry,
Stacey Peterson, dear alumni.
Interrupt really quickly.
Hi.
Nancy, yes. I see that you're not seeing the whiteboard. Does it help if Angie just screen shares that with you?
Can you see it now, Nancy?
You have it now. Okay.
Great. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So if you're not collaborating on the whiteboard, you can simply chat your suggestions in the chat and Christy will flag those up to me. If you are collaborating on the whiteboard, you can just simply double click one of these white or yellow Post-its and enter your own ideas. And we'll just kind of let those populate a little bit.
Nancy, if you want, you can just throw your thoughts in the chat box if the whiteboard isn't working for you.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, Nancy, if you're able to click the URL and in the upper right-hand corner, it'll say continue as guest. And then you enter in an email. Don't select the checkbox. Oh, I'll send you the URL. It's in the chat. Here you go, Nancy.
We have John popping on.
Now I see at least. There we go. Awesome. Thank you, Rich. Tailored to the audience, appealing to their situation and motivations. Add that to the board. And that's a tough one. One thing many of the presenters at Startup Week asked are, do we know who's attending and why they're attending? And we couldn't know that. So it's tough to tailor this one. Once I see, if you're using just my screen to see these ideas, I will make my view larger once and kind of move or pan around the whiteboard once we have some suggestions in there. So you can think about if you've seen a TED Talk. Oh yeah, and if you need more stickies, you can click the little sticky note. You can think about a TED Talk that you've seen, if you've attended another Startup Week event. If you've seen ineffective presentations, you can flip that on its head and think about what might have made that more effective or what made it ineffective. Okay, Paul. Paul likes seeing a roadmap, takeaways.
I love the little ants
20
moving around on the whiteboard. I love that. It's so much fun to see.
So I'm hearing about audience focused, compelling visuals, clear goals and structure. And you can think about the speaker. You can start to slice apart sort of the person giving the presentation as well as the content that's supporting it. And you could speak to either of those separately. I'm glad nobody's cheating and looking at the other side of the whiteboard. Pre-presentation, Paul likes it when he sees a speaker chatting with attendees. Yep. Lots of comments about the sort of the presenter's style and ability to engage the audience. So thinking about tone and mechanics. I see eye contact, that sort of thing. Yep. I don't know who wrote, maybe I can tell, who wrote compelling visuals. If you could define compelling a little bit more. I see compelling visuals twice. One saying not overcrowded with text. Oh, compelling visuals 3 times. Storytelling. Let's break storytelling apart a little bit more. Dante, if you could, if you wouldn't mind elaborating. Okay, I'm going to give about 1 more minute, and then we're going to talk about these.
Angie, Rich added slides, visuals that is the narrative instead of trying to replicate it. Less words on slide. Love it.
Thank you, Rich. Yep. All right, I'm going to start. I see Chris is typing, so go ahead and type, Chris.
And Dante answered your question about storytelling. Awesome. The ability to really get to people's emotions, not just their headspace. Paul, Zoom has unfortunately brought back my ums and so's. Very true. Find that also, especially when it's being recorded. I'm not walking around like I would. What would have been a physical change of direction and moving to a new point so rears its ugly head. Correct. I agree.
You know, Paul, I have a beef with the elimination of ums and so's, and if you want to feel less bad about it, you can find plenty of support to indicate that those filler words actually keep an audience engaged. So don't let anybody poo-poo on your ums and so's. All right, so see, there we go. Not transition. That's what they are. Yes, it's true. You can, if I can find that article, maybe if I can share it with event attendees, I'm not sure if I can do that. Maybe while you work during the workshop part. Okay, So just keeping an eye on time here. So thank you all for contributing. This was really great. I hope you also had fun with maybe a new tool. We're collaborating around the world using Envision. No, we are not sponsored by them, and they do not pay us to use this. I had a student ask that recently. So I'm going to do a little bit of some kind of clustering here. So yeah, no poo-pooing here, Paul, you got it. So let's see. So we're thinking about components of effective presentations. I see audience focused, connection to the audience, knowing their state of mind. And I think that comment from Dante also talked about the ability to get people's emotions and get in their headspace. And that's really connecting again to that audience, kind of knowing what's important to them. A compelling story, a clear challenge, process, and solution. So that's something we're going to kind of dig into a little bit more. Not making that more right, just calling it out, giving it some hierarchy, if you will. Interactive, so engagement with the audience. So a lot of these are focused around audience connection and compelling story. That one we're going to move over here. So clear goals and structure, focused on the relevant content. Here we go. Here's more audience connection. Then we've got an emotions, an emotional appeal. And then we've got storyline, content, goals and structure, clear challenge, process, and solution. So this is kind of talking about story and structure. And then here we go. Here's audience connection again. I think even this one that's seen a list of to-dos at the end, those takeaways, that would be audience specific, right? So like that application, the ability to apply it. I would put that kind of also with the audience connection. A clear message might be around the story and the structure. Compelling visuals that aid the narrative instead of trying to replicate it. Possibly the sources of inspiration are those visuals as well. And here we have compelling visuals. So you all did just all my work for me. Key teacher moment. Source ideas from the crowd, and then they do the content for you. So you're geniuses because you're humans who have experienced probably ineffective and effective presentations. I hope this one falls in the latter today. Oh, I missed this middle one too. Humor, fun, compelling visuals. Okay, we got a lot of stuff in here. Likely we can just pull out those compelling visuals. Put this stuff over here, put compelling visuals over here, just piggyback it over there. Okay, so when we're thinking about effective presentations, there's nuance to each of these categories, but the big categories that have bubbled up are thinking about the story and the structure, and they're interconnected as well, right? When we categorize and clump these, we're trying to find patterns, but also there's a lot of interconnection between these. So thinking about the story, what is the message? What is it you're trying to convey? And then thinking about the structure and how you're going to convey that, right? How much space does everything get? What do you lead with? What do you end with? What goes in the middle? And then the slides, what visuals connect that message to the audience, and then that audience connection, and really a lot of like speaker mechanics. We didn't get any sort of, maybe it's the time we live in right now, but like moving around and using the space and kind of commanding a room. A little bit different in Zoom and video calls, but certainly when we're in person, sort of using your body and your command of the space that you occupy to also support that story and that structure. So the audience connection, or that the speaker kind of mechanics, and the slides sort of stitch together or support that story and that structure. But again, all, if effectively done, they all sort of interconnect, interweave, and support each other. I'm going to go back over here. So thank you for sourcing those. Look at that. Again, geniuses. So when you're thinking about these components, we can really slice it. And I love alliteration. So the story, the structure, and the slides. It's a helpful mnemonic device to have that. So today we're going to focus first on the slides, and then we're going to come to the story and the structure. So we're going to think about slides and how we design them. And I'm just going to introduce three key, very fundamental, I would say, design principles, and think about how those apply to effective presentations, and possibly even some of the, now that you've kind of warmed yourself up and you're in this zone, you'll be able to even think about how you've seen these things in those presentations that have been resonant or effective. So we're going to speak about, or I'm going to talk about, introduce hierarchy, talk about hierarchy, contrast, and rhythm. And I'm sorry I don't have a cool little icon for rhythm. Progress over perfection. So these are the three fundamental principles, and we're going to talk about them individually just a bit. And again, if we were had a little bit less people on the call and could all screen share, I might kind of source some ideas from the crowd, but I'm going to do a little bit more talking at you. And then we'll get to the fun stuff, which is the interactive workshop. So this is kind of eating your vegetables. So hierarchy, dun, da, 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 right? Hierarchy is again, it's a layperson term, right? It's not owned by designers. It's probably something a word that you've used before, and it's really about giving importance to the most important things. It takes a significant degree of kind of discernment and thoughtfulness, especially when we're giving presentations that we're really expert in. So some of you on the call might be entrepreneurs or really like subject matter experts in your industry, and you have to give presentations. And I've coached PhDs on how to give a presentation to a layperson audience in under 5 minutes, and they insist it can't be done, and I insist it can. And it's about choosing what is the most important thing that you want to speak to. And this is thinking about this in the story, the structure, and the slides. But for right now, we can just think about slides, right? But giving the most important elements priority, giving them visual priority, visual importance. This helps viewers navigate your screen and navigate kind of that content. And sort of, we read in Western cultures left to right, top to bottom. So considering those kind of reading patterns is helpful as well. And you can use all the design elements, and I'll actually give you a bonus. We're talking about principles, but I'll give you some bonus elements at the end to type and color and image and how to use those to implement hierarchy. But from a very basic sort of principle level, you can see, I'll give you 4, what I would call thumbnails of how to arrange your slides with content. And this is very conceptual, but we'll apply it in a little bit. So here we have, a very kind of top-down hierarchy, right? The top is most important, just conceptually, and then it gets less and less so, supporting details. So sort of that headline, subhead, details. Then we can use sort of that left to right again, right? So using, splitting up and I'm largely thinking about slides on a landscape portrait, or landscape format for a laptop or a projector. So, there's my time timer. I'm a little bit behind, but we'll catch up. So using that left side, kind of rule of thirds, so 2/3, 1/3, rather than half and half. And you can even see that applied with the slide before that. But using things kind of centered on the left-hand side of the screen, or giving some hierarchy to the left side of the screen and some supporting details on the right. So thinking about how you divide up your page that way, or your screen. You can give center focus, right? So you can kind of really draw the attention in either through a full bleed image or full color. But again, just thinking conceptually, sort of what do I have to play with, and how do I create hierarchy, and what are the different ways that I can do it? How do I signal something is important? How do I draw attention to one element and let the others sit as supporting elements, right? If everything's very important, nothing's important. So you have to decide what is the thing I want to showcase here. And remember, especially with slides, you still have the speaker and the narrative to support what it is that you're putting on that slide. So it doesn't have to do everything for you. It just needs to do one thing well. And then another way, kind of flipping that too, right? So sometimes using the bottom portion of the screen for hierarchy, or even sometimes those smaller things, just because they're smaller doesn't mean they're less important, but because they're positioned at the top. So just thinking about, again, how do I break up my slide? What then eventually would get to content, and what content do I want to put on there? But right now, just thinking conceptually at a fundamental level, how do I create hierarchy? I'm just using, and this is what if any of you did go to design school, you probably had to do many exercises like this where all you could use was black and white and blocks, right? And kind of thinking, how do I apply this principle using that one single element? Any questions on hierarchy? You can put them in the chat. I'll give a moment. This is a sorting principle, right? Help me find the meaning, help me find the importance. And really, really key when giving a presentation, because our, and especially in remote, our distractibility is very high. Our audience's ability to be distracted. And so their ability to come back to that slide as an anchor and to understand the key point that's being addressed is a really helpful, like kind of a nice thing to do for your audience. Okay, we're going to move on to contrast. So contrast, we're going to build up these. We've got hierarchy. Let's pick what's most important. Now, contrast helps us, again, to sort, right? These are all like human perception principles, but that's signaling some sort of difference, right? It's creating some sort of distinction, and it's just added on top of hierarchy. It can reinforce that hierarchy. If you know what's important, you can use contrast, and again, these elements of color and type and imagery to create that contrast. So you can think of thick versus thin, or light versus dark, bright versus subdued, again, very conceptual level. And that reinforces that hierarchy and creates that emphasis. Too much contrast can be fatiguing. Not enough can be too subtle, right? So when you partner these two things, you just strengthen that key message. So here, I think this is best shown by sort of thinking, here's our hierarchy slides, right? They're simply the same color, black and white, gray and white, but you get the idea, right? And if we wanted to add a layer of contrast to those, to call something out, to call attention to something, maybe a particular point within that point that we're making, we can kind of go through, and hopefully this will show up. Oops. Please play along. Oops, oh, no, it's my fun slide. Hold on. Let's go back. Oh, I'm so sorry, bummer. Well, now you know the next one. Everybody can win.
Now you wrecked it, Angie. Everybody's gonna sign off.
I know, I was gonna do a dance to rhythm too. It's gonna be really cool. Okay, I don't know why it's not working. Oh, poo. Oh. Shoot, I know why. I bet I didn't put them in the back. Okay. Imagine, if you will, that one single component of each of these grayscale images was black, right? Or was yellow. I use black to show that even just in grayscale, you can create contrast, but you can imagine that one part of this, one slice of this is called out just with color, right? Or just with tint. Creating a pattern, you could use a pattern. Each of mine kind of just activated one component of that to create, again, to strengthen the hierarchy and to create some, by creating some contrast. And I created that contrast only with grayscale, with black. Maybe I'll show it to you at a break. It wasn't that cool, but just kind of showing that hierarchy and contrast work hand in hand to strengthen the resonance of that key point that you're making. Questions on hierarchy or contrast? And now remember, I'm looking at these at a very conceptual as well as singular instance level. So I'm looking at single slides. We know that things don't exist as single slides. And in a presentation, it's all the things, right? It's the person speaking. It's the why are they speaking? How does this connect to me? How do I apply this possibly, like Paul mentioned? So that final principle, you can see, actually, I have to keep clicking because I have transitions. They're just hidden. Okay, let's see now. Ready? There we go. So that final principle is is the dance, right? This is, we've talked about these single instances, and they're pretty static in their slides, and maybe those are things you already know. That's fine. Rhythm is like, I just think about, music, musicians, jazz, versus rhythm and blues versus, I don't know, hip hop. But rhythm is that sense of movement, right? Like, where is this going, and when are we at rest, and when is it going to pick up? And there's sort of, I'll probably get the words wrong, but if you have a refrain, right, and there's something you're hearkening back to, and you continue to call back, right, that's that sense of consistency and gives an anchor. But then there's kind of a dance, and there's more movement. You're not static, you're not sitting still. And you're using that consistency and variety to create a pattern. So this one is a complex principle in concept, because it combination of other principles, right? So consistency and variety, and then pattern and that element of pattern. But rhythm is just like thinking, what do I repeat? What's new? And how do I bring my audience along on a ride, both visually and in spoken word? So this is, now here you can see those contrast slides, right? So those are those little thumbnails with the hierarchy and the contrast added, but now kind of playing out in a sort of conceptual rhythm, if you will. So we see some repetition. If I was being really kind of unique with my slides, I might throw in one that's totally different, right, to create that hierarchy and maybe a climax in that story, something that's totally different. But you see this repetition, it might be irregular. Sometimes rhythm is very regular. Sometimes rhythm is very irregular. Again, like jazz versus, you know, a church hymn, right? Something that's regular and comforting and kind of, I get it, and I kind of know where it's going, but I'm still learning something. Or something that's kind of totally novel, right? And thinking about your story and what your story is and how to use rhythm, what type of rhythm do you want, right, to support that story. But again, it's building upon, it's kind of activating those slides that have strong hierarchy, have a bit of contrast, and then stitching them all together to create that sense of movement and dynamicism within your presentation. Okay, we got to move on to the super fun stuff. So probably a refresher for some of you, hopefully a little bit of new kind of thinking about things slightly differently. So now those are some design principles for effective presentations. Now we're going to apply those principles. So big thing we do for sure at Prime, and I've been teaching for 16 years or so, huge on applying what we're learning, right? Like, let's just do it now. You don't need to go back home and do homework. We'll just do it right here. So it gets in your brain a little bit more firmly. So we're going to apply those, and I'm going to give you a story and a structure. Now, super stretch goal, if you think you already have one, you could do that. But I think it's better if you came for the hero's journey. We're going to leverage the hero's journey because it's a pre-existing story that you don't have to make up. And it has a structure. And bonus, that structure is pretty common in like Western American literature, right? No, sorry, Germany. I'm sure the hero's journey is also popular there. I just don't want to speak to things I don't know. But the hero's journey, Star Wars, or so I'm told. I don't know a lot about Star Wars. Don't hate me. But it's a very common narrative device that we're familiar with, and it probably applies to stories that you want to tell, either for your product, your company, your organization, a project you've worked on. Because it's so familiar to the audience, it can be really a helpful structure to start with. So this is, I give credit where credit's due. So this is I slightly adapted this kind of basic narrative template from an individual, Kyle Gray. But this is the hero's journey. This is a genericized version of the hero's journey. So I will read it to you. Meet our hero. One day, our hero meets an older, wiser person who nudges them on an adventure. They depart for the adventure, facing various obstacles along the way. Oftentimes, they feel like they may not be able to overcome their problems. However, during the darkest moment, the hero finds a treasure, a secret, or a tool to help them solve the problem that they once saw as impossible. As soon as they find this, they get results and return home wiser and stronger than before. They share their story with others. Now, this might sound somewhat familiar to you. Again, it's generic. Here's the structure of that narrative framework. And if any of you were literature students, you probably could give this talk more effectively than I could. But the hero's journey is broken into these components. So we have the departure, we have the obstacles, we have the discovery, and we have the return. Those are the components of that story, right? And you can kind of see where they exist in that actual written narrative. So you can kind of imagine, like, let's say, like I just did, this is my narrative. This is the story I wish to tell. I can break it down into those structural elements. And then I can create some slides to support that story. And that's what we're going to have you do. Another way of looking at these, if you like alliterations, is the character, the conflict, the climax, and the conclusion. Maybe I should just use those from now on. I love them so much. Okay, so we're going to take that story, take that structure, and apply what we talked about in terms of slides, slide design, hierarchy, contrast, and rhythm at a very elemental level. And I'm going to ask you to take 10, 15 minutes to use simple pictograms and shapes to depict that story of the hero's journey for your audience. Oh, shoot, I forgot to. Okay, well, we'll weave this in. So I want you to apply those 3 principles. And I'm going to give you a template. There's a template hidden in that whiteboard. Don't move it just yet. I will show you. Here's some examples of what I mean by simple representative shapes or pictograms, not necessarily a hero's journey there, but just so you know, you can kind of draw very simple shapes in that Envision whiteboard, boxes and circles. You can also just use the pen and it'll even kind of clean up your drawings for you, kind of straighten things up. But that's what I mean by simple representative shapes. And then repeated thematic elements. You can kind of see kind of a continuation of some of those components across the screen. So you can kind of create a character if you want, but they're very basic. This is not a test of how well you can illustrate. This is thinking about elements and how to use those elements across principles and how to use elements on a screen to kind of reinforce those principles and tell that story. You don't have to make up a story. I gave one to you and you have the structure. So you're going to use that whiteboard, and I gave it kind of looks like this. So I'm gonna have you claim a spot on the whiteboard and get sketching. So just toggling over here, moving over. Here's the examples that I showed. So, and credit, again, where credit's due, those are from former students. So now I'm gonna delete these little boxes. These are from before. And you can, how many people we have? I'll leave, hopefully there's enough. You can kind of claim one of those. Let's see, 5 times 3, maybe not enough. I will duplicate a row. Okay, now we should have enough. Now, here's the trick. We talked about, and if for some reason the hero's journey is not showing up for you, you can refresh that page. Sometimes it just takes a while. Now, I made a little bit of a mistake. Oh, Janine, you already claimed a spot. Awesome. I made a little bit of a mistake, but I'd like you all to help me fix it. So here's that hero's journey and here's that structure. Now, usually I assign you a component of that structure that your audience is more familiar with. So we didn't talk, I heard you all share, saw you all share about how important connecting with your audience is, or sort of knowing what your audience knows, how important that is. So as an exercise, I usually give you one of those components, one of those pieces of the structure that your audience is familiar with. And that can allow you to flex or expand the other parts and create different hierarchy across different individuals. Now, the thing that I did wrong was I copied and pasted this template with the return as the same element in each person. So a couple of you, Janine, maybe you want to change it to obstacles. And let's see, who else we got on here? Steph, why don't you change it to the discovery? And anybody else on here? Oh, great. Janine and Steph, you're going to be my demonstrators. But anybody else, don't hesitate to change that from the return to something else. It's fine if we have them again. Nancy, the 4 parts are the departure, the obstacles, the discovery, and the return. Forgive my typing. Okay, so I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Yep, 10 minutes. And ask you to spend some time, and I'll kind of watch it. So and don't use here we go, sorry. Angie, stay organized here. Claim a spot on the whiteboard, get sketching. Draw in the boxes, consider your audience, and leave the lines blank for now. We'll use those in a little bit. I will also post, Nancy, I'm going to post a PDF for you as well, and anybody else that wishes to use that or download that, so you can actually have a local copy of that storyboard with the narrative structure and the story and the storyboard template as well. Don't be, and Nancy, do not be sorry. I'm glad it's new to you. That's fun. So I'll give till 5 after to work on that. If you are working at home and not on the whiteboard, you can use that template. You really can just draw boxes on any piece of paper, but that template includes the story and the structure. There's absolutely no right or wrong. This is all about practice and applying, and I know we're doing it very rapidly. Not about completion or perfection. All about learning and progress. You don't have to fill in all those boxes. You can use as many or as few as you like. And I will be quiet. Maybe I should share this in case people aren't watching. I can share the fun. You can kind of see everybody whiteboarding at the same time, which is kind of fun. So give about 1 more minute. I know you won't be done, but those of you whiteboarding, you're doing an awesome job. I appreciate your participation. It's been real fun figuring out how to adapt in-person activities for digital. Sometimes you get fun little things like this. Joey, you can ask for my slide deck. You don't have to come to steal it. Also, I think you have a copy, dear alumni.
And hi.
Okay, well, those of you who are whiteboarding, wrap up. And if you're doing it at home, wrap up. I'm going to delete the blank whiteboard, so don't freak out. I won't delete yours. It's going to delete the ones that haven't been used. Maybe I'll leave one there in case people want to use it for reference. Okay, now normally, if we had, I shouldn't say normally, if we had a little bit more time and we could complete these, I'd pair you up and have you take a look at what each other did and try to identify where each of these components of each of these structural bits of the story are occurring, right? So that's what those lines underneath are for. So if you're an educator and you want to do this in your classroom, or you want to borrow this, go forth. This is not proprietary, but it is usually a parent share at this point and have people kind of take somebody else's slides, look at what the audience is familiar with, and then use those little lines underneath to indicate where they think like the departure is occurring, where they think the discovery is occurring. And that's sort of what we do. In the interest of the time that we have, I'd like to ask, let's see, we've got Steph, Janine, Brigitte, if I'm saying it with appropriate accent. If I'm not, I'm really sorry. And Stacy, who's a bit of a cheater because she's an alumni, but I love her. I have the 4 of you. I was wondering, Steph or Janine or Brigitte, would you be willing to kind of go off mute and talk us through how you approach this and where the things are occurring? Since we don't really have time to guess, which is fun. So I'm looking at Steph. Steph, are you able and willing to turn on your audio and visual or video and talk us through how you approached storyboarding this for your audience who is familiar with the discovery?
Steph is hiding because she hasn't popped up yet, so she might be a little weird. She can't
Okay.
you, but she said she'll write something.
Janine. So. Oh, there she goes. Okay, that's fine. Nope, good. Thank you. Steph, I'll let you write. We're going to move on and see if Janine might be willing to kind of talk us through at all. Maybe you're at work and you are attending this incognito. That's fine. Just stop pretending. Okay, then I can talk through what I see too. Brigitte? Or I hope I'm saying your name right. Nobody. Okay. So here's what I would say. Oh, Stacy, I did not plant her, but I know she's an alumni. Stacy, would you be willing to talk through? I think you just click the little button at the bottom that has a microphone.
I think you need to request to share your audio and video.
You do it. Oops, not like that. I can't see.
Well, and I'm a moderator, so I don't have the same controls as.
Oh, goober. Okay. How about I just talk through what I see? Improv. Oh, the link to ask in the upper right. Okay, thanks, Nancy. She says there's a link to ask in the upper right. Ask for permission. Woo! Stacy Ann Peterson.
All right, is it working?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hi.
It is. Hi. We can. Would you be willing to talk us through how you approach this and where you see these different elements occurring?
So I went with the default on the audience being familiar with the return. And admittedly, I did not get to spend a lot of mental energy on that since we had such a short amount of time. But I sort of imagined a scenario here where we have our hero and then the older, wiser person coming together to solve a common problem. So spending a little bit more time on introducing those two individuals as separate people, since I'm assuming that this is maybe a scenario where the audience is already familiar with the final product of their collaboration, but it may be less familiar with how they sort of came together to solve that common problem. So kind of introducing each of them as individuals, then the shared problem that they have together, their decision to come together to solve that problem collaboratively. Had a bit of a hard time sort of depicting that, what they're doing to find the tool or the thing that's going to magically, solve their problem for them. And then, the exclamation point here is honestly just the stand-in for that magic tool that I, had to put something in there at the last minute. But then just spending a very little time at the end here showing the impact of that collaboration together with, the graph here, hopefully trending in a more positive direction. So definitely spending more of that effort on the why of that collaboration as opposed to the outcome.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking us through that. I kind of combined some of these different ones. I tried to make it kind of standard here. So I think, and this is a great example of how even just storyboarding to start a presentation and thinking about, okay, if the audience is familiar with this thing, maybe I should spend a bit more time on this other thing, right? And kind of expand and contract your content appropriately. And that's a really tough thing to do. Again, if we're subject matter experts or we have a strong command of what it is we're talking about, or we're really passionate about it, it can feel really hard to leave something on the cutting room floor, so to speak. But it's so important. And also, if you're giving a presentation, the more you know about the context, the more you might know if you can share things ahead of time, ask questions ahead of time, share materials at the end, give your contact information, and know that if people are really interested, they can always reach out and ask you for follow-up questions, right? But without that hierarchy, without that importance, without that consideration of the structure and a thoughtful approach to how we use space, both as our bodies and as our word and as our slides and across the slides, it will likely be less effective, right? So thank you, Stacy, and great job all of you. I just think this is so great. I hope you all had fun using a little different tool. Here we see again some repeated elements, those characters, and kind of those symbols, right? Exclamation mark and kind of activated lines. Here we go. Steph is sharing. Hero is introduced in slide 1. So they're familiar with the discovery. So hero is introduced and overwhelmed by problems. This is the older, wiser person. They're meeting the idea of the tool already. That's interesting. Yep. And then there's the departure, and then coming up against those obstacles and kind of thinking. Now, here we're using graphics, right? But if you think about conceptually an obstacle, and you present that obstacle and then kind of like move it off screen a little bit, or kind of keep it there but shove it aside. And we've got some great animations and activations and builds we can use in presentations, and that this even just might open up your way of thinking. Totally different graphics, totally different imagery that you want to use, but what's kind of my narrative device and what's my slide device? Sorry for cutting that short stuff, but good job. And yeah, story and rhythm, great job. You did, that is coming through for sure. And Birgit's person ended up, I think this is Corona. They get the challenge to travel the world, and then Corona comes and they have to stay at home, and they worked on projects. I like you created a unique story there. That's great. Okay, I'm sorry to cut those too short. Thank you so much for sharing. I am going to wrap this up on time, which is a very big challenge of mine, but we took a look, and as a reminder, these were those principles we talked about. There's a couple supporting or similar principles. If you want to go dig into them a little bit more, you can. I'm sorry, I don't have a URL, but you can likely Google design principles or elements of design, principles of design, and find definitions for these and sort of how they apply. Last thing I'll quickly mention, I think I can share these slides. I feel kind of bad if I can't. Some elements too, we talked about text, color, and image. I know I'm going to hit time, so I won't speak to them, but if I maybe just record this and you can see them, then you can come back to the recording. So text, color, and images, here's a few sort of tips, really basic fundamentals, kind of fail-safe rules of thumb, as it were, if you're sort of like, this isn't my jam space and I don't really know how to work with these elements, here's some really basic guidelines for you. So how to kind of use text, what to select for color, and then how to use images. And again, sorry, I didn't have time to talk through each of those, but we came for principles. We talked about principles. We did some storytelling. This was a bonus. So thank you so much for coming and participating and attending. I hope you kind of got warmed up for the day and you learned something. Again, I'm Angie Wang and my partner, Christy Larson. If you are interested at all in partnering with Prime, we do a number of pro bono projects. The URL is there. And we also have a number of ways to engage as employers. So if you have a project that you'd like to have worked on, nonprofits, entrepreneurs, even large businesses that are resource strapped, feel free to reach out. And if you want to get engaged as a mentor or a guest speaker, anything like that at Prime, we'd love to have you. So thank you for all for attending. I hope you had fun and have a great day or evening.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. I'm just going to post these links in here. Oops. Okay, I'm adding the URLs separately.
And I don't know if they just cut us off. I would assume they just kind of pull the plug.
Oh, hey, Ashley. Bye. Good to see ya. I'm going to stop, or I'll keep it on there. I'll just wait till the eyes go away.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We just kind of, or until they just get rid of us, which could very well be the case.
Well, it says time left is,
That's,
let's see, how many eyes are they?
the time left is for the entire day.
What is the little green dot in 102? Is that attendees
the
of
whole
the
event? Yep.
Event? Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening. I actually am. Attend the next one.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop
Okay.
sharing.
That was
That's
great.
fun.
Absolutely great.
Fast and furious.
Good work. I'm amazed that you got through all that.
I can't believe I ended at 10:50.
Crushing it, Angie. Crushing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
I'm going to pop off. Bye, everybody. You're still